Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Amy. I work at Eventbrite, and I'll be chairing this panel discussion this morning. In an ironic twist, I think our Australian organiser may have gotten a bit confused with the time difference, so we're still waiting for him to dial in, but we do have our UK creators on the line and we have a lot that we want to speak to them about. So I think we're going to get started. And yeah, just a little bit of housekeeping before we do. So our plan this morning is to do 40 to 50 minutes of a panel discussion, followed by a quick run through of some of our COVID resources. So we're hoping that you'll find those quite helpful and be able to kind of take those away with you at the end. We have had to turn off our live questions, unfortunately, for this one because we've got quite a high attendee list, but any of the pre-submitted questions have been incorporated into the discussion. So a lot of what you're probably wondering about will be covered off anyway. So no need to worry about that. And the other thing to know is that we will be sending a recording afterwards. So you will receive an email in the next couple of days with a link to the recording of this, plus a bunch of resources that we think you'll find helpful as you start replanning your events for 2021. And there'll also be a short survey as well that we'd love you to fill out so we can keep making these webinars better and better. So just before I introduce our panel, I just wanted to give some background on why we're doing this webinar. Since the UK government announced the reopening roadmap, we've obviously spoken to a lot of our creators and there's been a lot of concern. A lot of people are really kind of wondering, you know, what lies ahead? How do I manage social distancing? How do I make my attendees feel safe? And we just thought the best way to kind of address it was to hear from other organisers. And hear from the people who are actually out there running the events at the moment. So that's why we decided to run this. So we really hope you find it useful. We have Craig, who runs Bournemouth Sevens Festival, and we have Wendy Cummings, who is running the Radiate Windrush Festival. So both amazing festivals run here in the UK, and we're really excited to hear from them. So we'll get started, and hopefully once our Australian organiser joins, we'll be able to dial him in as well. So I'm just going to ask Craig and Wendy to come off mute now, please. And we also have my colleague Sandra on the call. She's going to be monitoring everything for us. So hey, Sandra. So let's get started. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here this morning. I know it's a very busy time for you, obviously with events kind of starting back up again. So I thought let's get started by just talking about your events and letting the people on this call know what they're all about, and I think specifically how they've been impacted as well by COVID over the last year, and then we can go from there. So I'll start with you, Craig, if that's okay.
Yeah, good morning to anyone in the UK and whatever time it is wherever. Nice to see so many people here. So as Amy said, my name's Craig Mathie. I'm the managing director of Bournemouth Sevens Festival. We're a sport and music festival that launched in 2008 and takes place down on the south coast. And we started life as a sports tournament with a kind of a small festival to the side. As the name would suggest, that kind of was inspired by rugby sevens, and we've grown over kind of subsequent years. In 2019, which was our last festival, we delivered our biggest ever festival with over 30,000 attendees. And 400 sports teams playing rugby, netball, dodgeball, hockey and volleyball. So a real kind of mix, a real unique offering in the UK, and very fortunate to recently have won a few different kind of UK festival awards and stuff. So on a really kind of nice trajectory as a business coming out the back of 2019, and all very excited for what 2020 was going to look like, as so many people were. And as with everyone who works in the industry, we lost last year, and I can imagine for anyone on the call whose sole business is delivering events or delivering festivals, that presents a really, really unique challenge. So we've been through the mire, to be honest. It's been an incredibly difficult year, and the fact that we're still going is testament to kind of the dedication of our team and also the support of Roger and Fleur, who own our business. So it's been an incredibly difficult year, but that said, by nature we're a very positive business, a very forward-looking business, and we feel very kind of hopeful that that this year and towards the end of this year is going to be a really positive return to live events, both for us and for the industry in general. So yeah, that's my day job. Alongside that, I'm also the Vice President of the National Outdoor Events Association. So have been involved in quite a few of the conversations happening with UK government about the return and that kind of thing as well.
Amazing. Thanks, Craig. Wendy.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, even good evening. My name is Wendy Cummings and I am the festival owner for Radiate Windrush Festival. It's actually Radiate Festival, but we run the Windrush Festival every single year and have been doing so since 2018. We are a grassroots community organisation that runs a community event. So back in 2017, 2018, we were looking for a celebration that really kind of marked the presence of the West Indian Caribbean community that had been present in the UK since roughly 1948 when the Empire Windrush docked in Tilbury. And it was the 70th anniversary, and we wanted a bigger celebration in London that would bring the people together from those communities so that they could show their intercultural differences. And we wanted to open that up to the wider community to allow them to kind of come in and see who we are and where we come from, because often our culture is kind of cherry-picked and homogenized, and only small amounts of Caribbean culture generally tend to get shared, and that's usually reggae music, jerk chicken, steel pans, and the gospel choirs. And we were like, we're so bigger than that. So we've been doing it literally on bootstrapping it on our own since 2018. It's been a crazy journey, and it's been one where it's really been community at the heart of everything, and its whole developmental roadmap has been friends and family. Literally, you would see my mum pitching in, my sisters and my brothers literally kind of running about and bringing this thing together. And 2018 was great. We brought in numbers of over 3,000 people, and that was without pretty much any press. And then 2019, we grew a little bit more as well. And it is a 2-day festival. So I don't know what I was thinking, but clearly I woke up and had a bright idea and ran with it anyway. And so 2020, we were prepared to obviously grow again and to welcome more people and just to continue to build the profile of the event. And obviously COVID happened. And for us, our event is in June, so it was quite soon in the summer calendar. And so we kind of started to notice a few things actually were coming up very slowly. And so I knew quite early on that something like massive was happening. But 2020 was a mad year. We didn't get the kind of financial support that we thought we were going to get. Kind of from government and Arts Council, but it is what it is, and we're still here, and it's a testament, as Craig would say, that we're coming for 2021 with all the gall and the balls that we do have. So yeah, that's us in a nutshell. Thank you for having me.
Amazing, thank you so much. So we have James. Thank God.
Sorry, guys.
No, it's fine.
We just had daylight saving on the weekend, but then I'm still out an hour. But anyway, I'm all good. I'm here.
We had thought it, like, ironically, it was probably a time difference thing. After all our kind of planning a global one. So thanks so much for being here. We just heard from Craig and Wendy there just about their events. We just got a quick background and just a little bit about how they were impacted by COVID. So I might just get you to quickly talk about BeerFest Australia and how it's impacted, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of the replanning.
Yeah, absolutely. So, BeerFest Australia's been around for 11 years now. We've only got 7 states and territories in Australia, and we've been in most. And we managed to do 6 post-COVID events since October. So it's been a challenging time, and but also, I guess, an exciting time. And I think you guys could relate to this, because I think events people are usually think out of the square anyway, and we're quite creative, and so we sort of use that skill set to our advantage, and use it as an opportunity to keep doing what we loved about the business, but then stop doing what we didn't like about the business. And really just thought, if we've got a blank canvas, how can we repaint this in a way that's going to work well. So we managed to do 6. October was our first one. We found that being first to market actually was favourable, because the document is constantly evolving. The COVID plans are constantly evolving. So one thing that we learned was we might have produced a COVID plan and it was all approved and everything's ready to go, but then it changes 4 or 5 times throughout that journey. So being first to market meant that your COVID plan probably wasn't as stringent as what the one was by the time we ran our 6th event. And even in the same states, we had events running 6 weeks after each other, and the documents were constantly evolving there. When we first started getting into planning with the health department, there was very much a us versus them mentality at the start. We sort of got the impression they didn't want us to go ahead because the last thing that they are worried about is events. What they're worried about is hospitals and schools and how to keep those things open. But as we know, events are extremely important for not only cultural aspects but also community and commercial aspects for staffing and contractors. So once we sort of got through that relationship challenge, we were able to sort of work, I think, closely together. And we, our security bill doubled. What got introduced was COVID marshals, which was a new thing. And the ratios, started off as 1 to 500. So 1 COVID marshal to 500 people, then 1 to 250, and then 1 to 100. So the security costs went up. Cleaning costs doubled. But what we found was, having open, honest conversations with contractors, they were prepared to work on quotes to get that down. We didn't need to pay deposits up front anymore to contractors because they just wanted to see events going. So there was a lot of power with us to negotiate what was right. What we found was we didn't need to advertise our event nearly as much as what we've had to in the past. So if we've spent, $80,000 to $100,000 on advertising an event, we might only have to spend about 20. Word of mouth traveled really strongly. So where areas that cost more, there was areas of saving. And we found that the consumer buy-in and consumer trust with brands that they knew was really strong. So in all our events we did, all 6, we had record first week sales. So we achieved better sales results than we've ever achieved. We sold out festivals. We decided to split sessions. So instead of having one day session of say 1 p.m. till 8 p.m. at night, we split it. So it was 11 till 4, break for an hour, clean, kick everyone out, new session at 5, go from 5 to 10. And what they did is we doubled our audience than what we would have had in the past. And we did all these things, not really thinking we would grow our audience base, but it was really just to meet the COVID restrictions and measures. And it ended up being that, from the first week, and it's such a great feeling, when you have that first week of strong sales, you're like, okay, we're actually in a good position here where, people are really responding in a positive way. And we found everyone was quite law abiding when there was lockdowns and restrictions and wear face masks, this is closed, don't go there, parks are closed. Everyone abided by it. But as soon as the green light went for everyone to be able to go to events again, there was an overwhelming just feeling to get out there. And what we found was, humans have evolved. We evolved pretty quickly. We were able, we found that people naturally socially distance. They kept, used hand sanitizers frequently. We're happy with spacing. And we also found that probably in our first couple of events, we were a bit hesitant with the COVID messaging because we didn't want to be the fun police. We didn't want to go out there and say, you can't do this and you've got to do this and make sure you bring this and do this and do that. We sort of, we probably sent a few emails out and, we were reminding people. And then on the day we reminded them and we found that they probably hadn't been reminded enough. So by the time we got to our 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th event, pinned at the top of our Facebook post was our COVID guidelines. Every email we sent had our COVID guidelines. Every ticket that went out, full description of what's happening, what's going to happen. And we found that that's what people loved and that's what they wanted. They wanted all that information, and it actually helped us sell more tickets the more sort of safety COVID messaging you put out there. Sold more tickets. Found that from an entertainment point of view, getting back to the, homegrown grassroots, because, we couldn't have interstate travel, so we couldn't have the touring acts coming from interstate, and having the homegrown acts actually worked really well, as, also because a lot of support, people wanted to support local. And so, we went back to, what did BeerFest mean? It means good food, good beer, good cider, master classes. Yes, entertainment's going to be there, but that actually wasn't the core focus of our business. But we had grown the entertainment to be so big. So we went back to, why do people love our brand and want to be there? And it was all about the beer and cider and food. So we focused a bit more heavily on that, and everything that we did sort of worked really well.
Well, that's definitely a post-COVID success story. If there ever, we could probably just end the webinar now, actually, and just leave everyone with that. That's amazing. And I think it's great to hear that, particularly when it comes to the kind of attendee behavior, which I think is a big concern. Definitely, I think Craig and Wendy, it's probably top of mind for the two of you at the moment, like making people feel safe and, encouraging compliance without being, as James said, like the fun police. Craig and Wendy, what are your kind of overarching concerns at the moment? Because I think this is a great opportunity for James to be able to kind of advise on them. Wendy, do you want to go first and just kind of, maybe talk about what's kind of on your mind at the moment?
I think for me, one of my key concerns is that we have a very wide-ranging audience. So we've got kind of granny right through to baby, and at our event we have 4, even 5 generations of one family normally coming. So for me, I'm just kind of, my thoughts are around how do we make them feel as safe as they can, in terms of those that are within the middle generations feeling like, yes, they can bring the young ones out, and they can also push that wheelchair as well, and bring their grandmothers and great grandmothers out into an environment where, they're going to feel comfortable and they're going to feel safe. So that's just one of my key things. Is it really simply down to signage and your hand sanitizers and your, this is the kind of spacing that you should have? Or is it a different kind of communication message that we should be kind of sharing, in your opinion?
Yeah, we had, so our New Year's Eve event is very much like that. We put on the fireworks for Launceston City in Tasmania, and it's a big community event, and we have, children, from newborns all the way through to 80. And what we found through our festivals is, obviously the older generation, there's some anomalies, but they're not as tech savvy as the younger generation. So they hated the scanning of the codes, and hated having to be directed to websites, didn't want to see the messaging on Facebook. So there was very much a traditional approach with, they can sign in, with a hand signature, their name and address, if they, if they'd prefer to do that. We had that available. I'd say hardly any used it, but they liked to know that was available. We had lots of signage, and I'm telling you, like, signage everywhere. You just can't have too much signage when you're walking in. If we had a lineup out the front, we'd have signage at the front. And yeah, I think just those little approaches, my dad's in his 80s, my mum's in her 70s. So talking with them, even, what would you like to see? What would make you want to go to the event, not go to the event? So we just found it was just those little things, getting more to traditional media, having your security guards talk to them as well. That's what we did. We had on average about 30 COVID marshals at each event, because that's what was required. And so we would pair them up with teams. And for us, it was, when I was picking the COVID marshals, it's, I want the best communicators. I don't want anyone to be, heavy force or anything like that. And talk to people, let them know the procedures, let them know what's happening at the event, let them know what we've done. And yeah, by doing that, we found if anything, usually when we get our events set up in the middle of parks and there's some heritage things and overlays along the parks, we usually get a bit of pushback from people, especially the older generation that live there, that don't want the event there. But I found this time around, I've never had so much more support from the older generation walking past, saying, good on you, well done. great to see events popping back up. And I think signage around the front of the event with everything that's going on, your COVID message, letting people, if there's lots of information saying, for more information, head to our website here. We found that's what worked well.
Perfect. So you went low tech, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Keep it simple.
Fine. Thank you very much for that. Craig, go ahead.
Yeah, I think really fascinating, and it's great to talk to someone from the future. I've never done that before. James, is have you still got social distancing in play in Australia or at your events?
Yeah, absolutely. And we went to a hard lockdown 2 weeks before our Melbourne event. So it was a 5-day hard lockdown, and we literally thought we were postponing the event. Worst case scenario, we've got to cancel, but we had a next date lined up. So Queensland, I'm based in Victoria, and our last event was in Vic. And look, we did have the flexibility of picking and choosing states. So we went, well, WA's responding, really well. They've gone for hard border closures. There's not many cases. Let's see how many events we can roll out in WA first, and then we chose Tasmania next because that was a fairly safe state. But Victoria, I think Victoria made a lot of international news because we were having quite a lot of cases, and represents something like 90% of Australia's cases. So we were worried about that, and we did go into a hard lockdown. And like that sort of got to, because I was in Victoria, I was listening to people, I was, feeling what's going on. We're in hard lockdown. I've got an event in 2 weeks. The lockdown's finishing on the Friday. We're bumping in on the Monday. Is this going to happen? And then speaking with people, speaking with customers, and seeing the confidence of going, mate, when this thing's locked, when we've got the gates open, we're there, we'll be there. So that's what we sort of found in Australia, is that everyone wants to do the right thing. Everyone was doing the right thing, where, if the government leaders were saying we're doing this and we're doing that, everyone was doing it. But once the green light happened that we could be open again, it was almost like a bit of a slingshot sort of approach, where you sort of get pulled back so much that everyone just went out quickly, and didn't know when the next lockdown was coming. So when our event was when the Australian Open was on as well. So it was, no crowds at the Australian Open, and then we were about a week or two afterwards. So it was testing times during that period.
Yeah, I think from us as an event organizer, probably the biggest thing that we're issuing with, kind of fighting with at the moment, maybe if I go back actually a little bit from that one, the first thought we had was, is there going to be customer demand? And as you said, and we've seen it as well since we went on sale. The day we went on sale, we had a few hundred ticket sales, and we hadn't even told anyone that we were on sale. And the next day we had our biggest ever day of ticket sales. So we're about to, provided we can happen this year, and provided the roadmap in the UK unfolds as it's hoped, then we should be in line for our biggest ever event, which is an amazing place to be and much needed after a year with zero income. The challenge we've got, I think, is the reality is that our event, and a lot of festivals don't work with social distancing in place. And in the UK, there hasn't kind of been that much guidance on that yet. So I think we're sat with an awful lot of event organisers looking at the event research programmes, so the government series of pilots, which are running through April and May, to see what drops out the other side of those. I know there's one scheduled, which is effectively a non-social distanced festival event happening at the start of May. So it'll be really interesting to see what kind of comes out the other side of that. So I think that's our biggest concern. We would love to deliver a socially distanced version of our festival, but we couldn't make it commercially stack up. So and also behaviours at a festival, kind of everyone in front of a main stage, people integrating, all that kind of thing. I just don't think we'd be true to our event. So thoroughly applaud people that have done that. And I think probably we're more thinking about what measures will be in place in terms of testing, pre-event testing, vaccination passports, all those kind of things that government are working through at the moment, and stuff. So we're in a little bit of a state of limbo at the moment, and I'm sure other people probably in the UK and around the world maybe feel the same. Between, we can kind of see where we're getting to, but we don't know exactly what those mitigations are going to look like. So and then I guess just the final thing to say was to hear your experiences of dealing with the health authorities in Australia is really interesting. All of a sudden, the Director of Public Health, so the regional county-based directors of public health in the UK, have got immense powers. They've got power to shut down events that they previously didn't have. So my encouragement to people on that would be to speak to your Director of Public Health, reach out to them, reach out to that department, involve them in your SAG process where maybe you hadn't previously, because we've found, as you did, James, actually once you build that relationship, they're incredibly supportive. They do want events to happen. They just want to focus on the framework and making sure that happens. So yeah, that would be my kind of real takeaway, is speak to those people really early, and if you're not already engaging with them, then you definitely should be. So yeah, it's an interesting place, really. We're like, it's there, we can see it, it's on the horizon, but there's a load of hurdles in the way still. So
yeah, and I think what's happened in Australia, so we've had situations where we had an event set up, we'd bumped in, the stages in, the bands, the DJs, and then 11 hours before we opened the gates, the Chief Health Officer said, no stage, no bands, no DJs. If you do, we'll shut your event down. So we went back and said, well, the stage is already in. By definition of bands, you mean groups of music. Can we have duos play? So they said, yes, you can. So we stripped the bands back, did duos, had a big stage, and there was no cap on, an audience around the stage. So we've done events where, there's been no cap on numbers in front of the stage. And then we've done events where the cap was 250 people are allowed to dance. And then we've done events where tables and chairs must be in front of the stage. People can dance, but can have to dance within their own space. And we'd be policing it and setting the music accordingly. So, have we had to be nimble and dynamic with each event? And I totally get where you're coming from with cost, because that's why we really pick and chose the events that we thought we could do something that consumer would be really happy to experience, and didn't steer too far away from our core business and values. But then also explained that to the consumer. So we've seen just recently, friends of ours do a music festival in Tasmania. They got told at the last minute, no dancing. And this is a big music festival, but you could bring your own deck chairs and be in front of the stages. And, they said, we either do that or we're going to have to cancel the event or postpone it. And everyone, the overwhelming response from the ticket holders was, we want this to go forward. We'll do whatever it takes to help you out. So a lot of what I've experienced from other music festivals and other events is the more genuine and honest and transparent you can be with your consumer quickly, within 24 to 48 hours of you getting told, the better they respond and react. So I'm not saying don't just keep an open mind, I think, in everything that you do, because it's so easy for us as event organisers to go, well, this is our model, we know what works, we're just going to stick with that. It's black and white. If you can sort of massage it a little bit, you might find there's opportunity still there to do the events. I've seen events go on smaller scales. Seen them divided up, fences through the middle of the stage. So you've got one section over one side, one section on the other, different entries, bars on different side. People can't cross over. So it's almost like 2 events with the one stage, and things like that have worked. What we needed to do was have, we had circles in any, with 1.5 metre distance. So in front of all toilets, any bar service area, tables and chairs for everyone. And then the density is what the health department was working off, is, if there was 2 square meters per person they were happy. So we made sure we had 4 square meters per person, and then they were really happy. So just things like that seemed to work. But again, out of the 6 events, I don't think we had one consistent event with, people dancing, mosh pits, music. So it was really hard to go, oh, well, that worked. So, we could say, oh, it worked in Perth for the first one. It was really good. No one got COVID. Everyone was fine. Everyone was well behaved. Nah, this is how we want it for the event 6 weeks later in the same state. We want it completely different. And for no real reason or rhyme or reason, just that's the way they wanted it. So, that was challenging for sure.
I just wanted to pick up on something that you said earlier, James, when you said that obviously you went back to your core values of the why in terms of when you started. And I think that if you're doing events that aren't just about being a concert outdoors, your audience understand what your event is all about, especially the ones that have been coming from the very start. So for them, I think they're always going to be flexible because there isn't their expectation of, I'm just going to see that particular artist and that's all I care about. For your festival, it's the quality of the product they're consuming in terms of the cider, the beer. Do you know what I mean? It's that social interaction around the enthusiasm for that product. In terms of Craig, it's the rugby. Obviously people are coming for other things, but if you love rugby at your core, they're coming for that. For my event, it's the core of the culture of the community and expressing that, which is why people come. And I think that's how we've been able to be flexible in our thinking, because even in terms of our planning, public health, when we were going to do an outdoor event last year, because it was so recent into the whole kind of COVID, they literally freaked out. And they were like, we're banning all events. And, at the time, the guidance was really quite hazy from the government. But they were like, we're banning everything within the borough for the entire year. And it was like, okay, well, actually, outdoors is a major mitigation factor. And if you want people to congregate anywhere, you need them to be outdoors rather than indoors. And that education hadn't really come through yet in terms of measuring that wind and air exchange to understand actually the passing of COVID from person to person. And, even with this year, it's like I've got kind of 2 ways of planning it in terms of we still don't know what the social distancing measures are going to be in what is going to be our step or stage 3. So my plan is to plan with those social distancing measures in place, and then to have something that's much more open and much more flexible and does what the guidance is saying at the moment, which is allowing people to determine what their level of social contact should be. And so by doing it that way, we can flex and we can say, okay, well, if you want to be more strict, we can do this, and it still works. Whereas actually, if we're trying to get, because we are literally the day before all of the restrictions, or the 2 days before all of the restrictions are supposed to be lifted. So we're right at the end of stage 3. So we're at a very, very interesting time where, some people are going to come out with the mindset of, by tomorrow, I won't have to wear masks and I can hug and kiss everyone that I want. So it's today going to make much of a difference. We're going to have those that are coming with that mindset, and we know that. And then we're going to have those that are coming like, oh, no, I still want to keep my distance. So for us, it's about how do we, ensuring that we create an environment that allows you to be the person in control of your experience of contact. So that's really what I've been looking at.
One thing I was just going to raise, if you don't mind, is I think one of the real risks of COVID, aside from all the actual risks of COVID, is that as event organisers, people focus too much on it and maybe miss some of the standard business of their risk assessments, their safety planning and their contingencies and all that kind of thing. And we've taken the approach of doing our COVID risk assessment as a COVID overlay that sits on top of our risk assessment and factors all the other bits in, so it can be, as Wendy suggested, adjusted accordingly. But we don't forget, actually, some of the most severe issues and risks presented at our event are things like bad weather, terrorism, all those kind of bits that we've focused about for years. How did you find in your planning for that, James, that it kind of, was there so much focus on COVID that people ran the risk of missing other bits and forgetting business as usual?
Absolutely. And so my business partner, Stacey, so her nickname became COVID Stacey, because she was so immersed in the COVID plans. And in hindsight, it actually worked really well, because what we did is we supported the business in other areas where she, as event organisers, you know, we would put plans together. We would build sites together. We would, you know, I might do the digital marketing, but we would sort of plan it all together. So what we did is Stacey solely worked on COVID plans, became the direct contact with DHHS and any government official, and I came in to support her in the roles. So I would read through the COVID plans just to proofread them as another set of eyes, offer her support in the meetings, but then we would employ people within the business to help build the sites with me so that she didn't have to do that. And I think that actually worked really well, because, you know, there would be times where she might be pushing too hard on COVID, being the fun police, going, you can't put that photo there, those people were too close together. I'm like, whoa, like, you know, people are, you know, if it's a couple, they're allowed to be, you know, hand in hand, you know. So it sort of got to that point, but it was good because it meant that, you know, she would challenge me on things, I would challenge her on things. We were across, you know, the COVID plans together, but her sole focus, and she definitely got worn out and she was, you know, she was exhausted by it. But it enabled us to keep the business running as still an exciting business, and still, you know, because I think if you go too far down the rabbit hole, you probably would go, well, why am I doing this event? Because, you know, it just doesn't make sense if that's my sole focus and that's all I'm worried about. So if I could recommend, if there's someone, whether it's, you know, someone already in the team or you bring someone in who's a bit of an expert but does understand events, you know, could help make that separation but still come together as one team to do provide a good event, would be my advice.
That was a really good question, actually, Craig. I did think about that recently. Like, are other things suffering because COVID is such a focus? Like, you know, are there other important elements that will get missed? So yeah, that was great advice. I think throughout this whole conversation so far, like, what I'm really getting from it is that, you know, there are so many things that we have to do differently now, but the overarching message is that people still want to come to events and they still want to party. I love the image of people coming along their deck chairs to a festival and just sitting, like, listening to music instead of dancing. I just think that's brilliant. It really shows the resilience. I would do it at this stage. I would go to any event in any capacity because I just want to be with people again. So I think that kind of sense of togetherness and unity is just amazing to see, and I think it kind of bodes really well for what's ahead, hopefully, for the UK festivals as well. And I think just on that note, just kind of before we hand over to Sandra to talk us through some resources, it would just be great to kind of get a sense from all three of you. Like, how has COVID made you think differently about your events? Like, what, you know, we're stripping it back, we're going back to basics, we're focusing on the kind of grassroots element. But if there was one overarching theme that has come out of the last year for you that, you know, you really want to put into your event planning going forward, what would that be? I'll start with Craig, please.
Yeah, great question. I think for me, and it's not really something I will put into my event, but the overwhelming sense of the last year has been about collaboration. So I think it's been, the analogy is much used about ships in a storm, and we're all in the same storm, but we're in different boats. And I really like that, because it's been the roughest 12 months of the events industry worldwide could have been through, and obviously slightly different on Australia, but in the UK events have been illegal for a year, and that's put huge pressure on the people, the businesses that operate in our space, the people that own those businesses, the staff that work in them, the mental health pressures of not knowing what your future looks like and everything like that has been incredibly difficult. And that's aside from all the actual health impacts of COVID. That's literally just us thinking about what that looks like for our industry. But I've had conversations with competitors, with suppliers, with friends, with people I'd never really spoken about how we get through this, how we get through it together. I've seen companies talk to each other. I've seen, as I said earlier, I work involved in NOAA, seen associations work together in ways they never had done before, had positive conversations with Director of Public Health who I'd never met, and they want to help events happen. So for me, it's about working together, and I really hope that on the other side of the kind of the COVID situation, and once we are released from the pandemic, that we use it as an opportunity to build back better, to kind of really think about what our industry does, the impact it has on our people. I hope there's a bit of a change from the kind of glamorizing of 18-hour days to just get events happened and all that kind of thing, and actually we start to think about the people that are involved in our industry, and that we start to really kind of focus on sustainability and say, well, actually, what impact do events have on the planet? How can we mitigate that? So there's a real opportunity. We've almost had the button reset over the last year, and how can we make our industry better? And we'll do that by working together. I've seen time and energy invested in strong working relationships come back to us 1,000-fold in the last year, and I think for me that's the real standout thing of what's happened. It's been about working together, and now if we can work together to create a better industry for all of us, then I think that's a real opportunity that maybe we wouldn't have had if it hadn't been for COVID. So maybe that's something to be thankful for.
Definitely. What about Radiate, Wendy? What do you think is going to be different now that the last year has happened?
Well, I think definitely for us at Radiate, partnerships. We've actually just taken on a new partner who's she does the largest natural hair event in the UK, and that's something she's been running, for 12 years, and we've just partnered together so that actually she can survive for the year as well, because she was due to have an indoor event in April and one in October, and last year, and literally it's been decimated. So we've brought her in to come and actually share space, combine audiences. Even though we are in the smaller tier of attendees, we've still brought her in and her audience to actually, give her the opportunity to be outdoors as well, because one of the things particularly with our community is we don't have a large number of events that are outdoors. And so for me, that is something that I champion and that I want to ensure changes as we go ahead, because the events industry is not heavily dominated by those from our community, from the back end even to the front. You'll see people from our community as performers, but not as actual organizers and the delivery partners. So that's something and that's a key reason why we are kind of one of the earliest festivals to kind of come through, because we're showing that it can be done also at a grassroots level. So the key theme is partnerships and common unity, finding the commonalities that we have, so that when we do share space, it is not about competition, it is about collaboration over competition, and understanding there is, even though we have been decimated, there is enough space for us all. And we need to start working like there really is enough space. And I think that if we do that and share our open spaces, we can feed into sustainability, just like what Craig was saying. We can actually feed into sustainability and make more sustainable events, greener events going forward, because of these combinations that are taking place, rather than us all trying to co-opt spaces on different weekends of different months. So that's something that we've really focused on in terms of our audience. Gone back to the absolute basics to say what it is about. It's about family. Mm-hmm. It's about socializing. It's about coming back to a place where, yes, we might be in a place of a new normal, but what we want to do is bring people from a mental health and social health perspective back into a place where they feel comfortable again to be around real people, because we've had such a digital 2020, such a digital 12 months, and it's like, we're going back to analog, we're going back to the smiles, we're going back to the waves. I don't know you, but I know I can't hug you right now, but I really do. I just, I'm literally in a place where I love people again. And I think, especially living in the UK, we can be quite icy. And, so creating those environments where actually the ice is, and we are just people of the sun again, that's my key. That's my key takeaway from 2020, just making it about people again and love.
That's a great takeaway. And James, coming to us from the future, what's the best thing about the future of events that you can identify now, having run a few?
Both of you sort of touched on it already. I think Craig sort of stole my word, which is reset was such a big thing for us, just hitting the reset button on our business. And I think teamwork, becoming good friends with the contractors and suppliers now, because what happened, there's always going to be a few that actually went the opposite, where became either more aggressive or harder to deal with. And, they might have been fighting their own battles, but, a lot of the contractors got closer with them. All of a sudden, when you're having your meeting with police and, our council, who our first port of call with any of our events, we're used to having meetings where it can sometimes be challenging, because they're really holding you accountable on things that probably maybe you would think shouldn't matter too much, and sometimes the conversations can be pointless because it's not big picture. Whereas you're walking into the meetings now, the police really want to see the events going, and it's like, wow, they're like, we'd love to see, I can't wait to see your event. That we've got police jumping up and down to come to your event because they want to work at it. And so there was this real, just came down to feeling like you're on the same side. And so I think those relationships now will continue to grow and get stronger. The relationships with contractors and suppliers will get stronger. And yeah, so again with our customers, I felt like we really got to know our customers, because there were so many beautiful messages back to us, either before the event or after the event. The joy in people's faces, when they're at the events, how happy they are. And, as event organisers, you've got to get out there and soak that up, because, it's quite infectious. So, I think, getting back to the people and, what really matters to people and why people are choosing your event and what's making it fun. They were the important takeaways for us.
Amazing. Thank you so much to the three of you. This has been, I think, an incredible conversation, and I hope everyone who listened in this morning enjoyed it too. I'm going to hand over to Sandra now, just to talk us through some resources we have that can kind of, alongside the inspiration from the panel, I think, give you the kind of the logistics to get moving and to be brave and to press reset and go back to what really matters, which I think is bringing people together. So thanks so much, guys. And Sandra, over to you now.
Thanks, guys. I've really enjoyed listening. There's some great advice there. I just wanted to take a few minutes at the end here now, just to talk through just a few resources that we have come up with, just to help you as well to navigate safely back to thinking about in-person events again. So the first one I want to mention is we have partnered with the risk management health experts over at Sheriff Group, and we've put together a comprehensive guide so that you can navigate how you're going to bring your business back to in-person events. So we've created the Eventbrite Safety Playbook, and that's going to help you understand a couple of items, some of which are the risk of transmission of COVID-19 at events, your role in managing that risk, pre-event safety checklist, and also great ways to communicate your protocol, procedures, and processes, both with your staff and attendees. There's also a great safety checklist available for you to download as well, and some great templates to communicate your COVID safety steps to your attendees. So it was just very interesting listening to our panelists today, just talk about communication. And I also think that that's very important as an event goer, to feel safe. I do like to know what's in place, what protocols. So we do have some great templates in there for you to use as well, that you can send to your attendees, just outlining what your safety steps are. And you can find the Eventbrite Safety Playbook on Eventbrite's blog. So that's at www.eventbrite.com/blog. And I would definitely recommend using that comprehensive resource. There's some great things in there that will be very useful. And the next thing I want to just look at as well is just how you can use the Eventbrite platform to help you as well. So you can collect information from all your attendees when they register, either online or on site, and information can be optional or required. So you can even create your own custom questions for attendees to answer, and you'll find that in your order form on the Events Manage page. Just go to Order Options on the left-hand side menu, and select order form. So you can collect all your information there, and it can also be used to collect information for contact tracing. And Eventbrite does also allow you to sell tickets in advance online and use the organizer app to create a comfortable contactless environment for your attendees. So just to note that with our Eventbrite organizer app, you can manage events, you can view the relevant data in real time, you can sell tickets, check in attendees, and manage orders. So that's free to download in Apple's App Store and Android's Play Store. And you can also access that information at any time by going to the reporting. So you'll find the reports on the left-hand side menu of the manage page of your event. We do also have different tools that can aid that. So for example, we have a repeating events tool, which we've seen has been very handy to control lower capacities and create time slotted events, for example, over the past year, as there's been few eases in lockdowns. We also have a reserved seating tool, which is great to allow you to, you can block off seats, for example, to adhere to social distancing measures as things ease off. And we also have, as we said, this contact order form that you can use for contact tracing as well. We do have Academy webinars, which can run through that in more detail if you're interested in just to look at kind of how you can use those tools. So you can check those out. I'm going to include a link to our Academy sessions in the follow-up email. And as Amy mentioned, we're also going to have a recording of this webinar, and we're going to put in a short survey. So it is very short, I promise. So if you do have a couple of minutes spare, please do fill that in, because we do want to make sure that these webinars are relevant and useful to you. So if you do have a couple of minutes to spare, please do fill that out, and you can expect that email in the next few days. So there are just a few resources to check out. And again, if you want to join any of our Academy sessions to learn more on any of those features, please check those out, and you can register for free.
So that's it, I think. Thank you everyone for joining. I hope you have a lovely morning, and do keep in touch, and best of luck. Take care.